water stuff. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Water Stuff, a new video series from the water blog waterstink.com. So it's been a while, about 6 years, since Roger and I did a video on waterstink.com. We've always meant to get back to doing videos, but what's actually happened in the meantime is I've been filmed a lot for water-related massive open online courses and various other projects. So we're getting back to it now, and the technology has moved on a lot in the 6 years that have gone by. So we're getting some equipment, and hopefully the quality of these videos will improve over time. So what's Water Stuff going to be? Well, we're going to visit various water-related sites, and we'll also look at some water and sanitation issues in and around the home. For this first episode, we're going to go and see the ruins, really, of an old water-related industry site. This is up in the hills in the north of England in the UK, near the town of Burnley. It's a site called Shedden Clough, and at Shedden Clough, a particular industry technique was used called hushing, or it was known as booming in the United States, storing up water to get rid of the topsoil or clay to reveal minerals and rocks underneath for open cast mining. At Shedden Clough it was limestone open cast mining, and the activity there dates from around the middle of the 16th century up to the very early 19th century, and it was at this time that the industry was pretty much rendered uncompetitive or obsolete by the arrival of the Leeds and Liverpool Canal that came right at the end of the 18th century. The technique itself of hushing dates back to the Romans and at least around the 1st century BC, and we've used as sources for this video, which you can see on the blog post that accompanies it as well, the information boards at the site. That is, they were maintained by United Utilities, the Northwest of England water and wastewater privatised utility company, and also from some other online sources such as the Craven and Pendle Geological Society, so we're very grateful that those sources exist. The roads to the site are quite scenic, even on a chilly winter's day where we filmed this particular footage. The Shedden Clough area is also the source of the River Brun, and the town of Burnley is where the River Brun meets the River Calder. The name Burnley comes from the river, from Brunley, or meadow of the River Brun. Glaciers in the Ice Age brought limestone boulders to the Shedden Valley from the Ribble Valley, which is adjacent to the northwest. You can Google Shedden Clough to find the site. Then look for the car park south, just off the long causeway, which is the road you'll use to drive to the site. We've arrived at the car park for the Hushings. The car park itself is free and access to the site is free. The site is, I believe, owned by United Utilities. There's a reservoir here as well, but it's maintained and information is provided by a variety of partner organisations. So you'll see information boards that they've provided, and you can see more on those about the site itself as you walk around. Now, the site is connected to water in at least three interesting ways. Firstly, the industry of getting at the lime from the limestone was due to the fact that there are limestone boulders in the soil here that were brought by glaciers from a nearby valley during the Ice Age. The industry itself had to get rid of all the glacial clays and soil on top of those. So the way they decided to do that was using water, and that water use has actually scarred or affected the landscape in quite dramatic ways, as we'll see. So using from the river and the rainfall off the moors here stored up ponds, the water was released down in floods or torrents and hushed or washed away the soil to reveal the limestones then, which could be worked and put into the kilns and made into quicklime that was for use then as mortar or fertilizer. So that's two connections of water to the site, firstly from the boulders being brought here by a glacier, and then the use of water to get at those for industry. But then the industry itself went away because of the arrival in the late 18th century of the Leeds and Liverpool Canal. So that's water-based navigation, water-based transport of materials for commerce. So that actually made it not very economic to do the activity here when limestone could just be brought in, or the actual finished products could be brought in from other parts of the country. So that, water brought the raw materials, water was the basis of the industry, and then water made the industry obsolete, which I find quite interesting. So we'll go and look at the site now, and also we'll note that opposite the site is a wind farm, interestingly, having driven here in an electric car that's powered by renewable electricity. You can walk around the perimeter of that wind farm. It's operated, I believe, by Scottish Power, and I'll put some footage in of that as well. A fourth water connection is that the lords of the Manor of Cliviger, which were the Townley family, held the rights to the use of any materials from this land. The family owned Townley Hall, which dates back to the 15th century. It's just outside Burnley, and you can see it here. Townley Hall was sold to the Burnley Corporation in the early 1900s and then was opened to the public. The Hushings, of course, were very dependent on water being available to fill the ponds ready to then hush down the landscape. The fourth water connection then is that Richard Townley from the Townley family maintained rainfall records between about 1677 and 1703 to keep track of the water that was available for the hushing. From the car park at the Hushings, you'll see an information sign telling you about the area. Then there's a gate you can go through and a lovely view of the landscape with Pendle Hill in the background. So it's about a 15-minute walk here across the tops towards the Hushings site, and I'd recommend wellies if it's a muddy day. Okay, so we've reached now from the car park, we've reached the sign for Shedden Clough and the Hushings, and it says, "You were on an old droveway once trodden by horses carrying lime away from the valley. During the 17th and 18th centuries this was a pack horse route, busy with trains of horses taking lime from the kilns further down Shedden Clough. The pack horse trains were commonly known as lime gals, as the ponies were the sturdy fell breed, the Galloway. They could carry around 200 pounds of lime in large panniers. The deep gorges you see are a result of open-cast limestone mining using a process known as hushing. To separate the limestone from the soil, the streams from the moors were diverted into ponds. The water was then released down the slopes to hush the soils from the limestone, leaving large stones that were then taken to the nearby kilns and burned to make lime. The blue arrows on this illustration indicate how the water would have travelled across the landscape. The lime was then transported by horses to be used as mortar for building and fertiliser for farmland. Today this droveway is still used as it is now part of the Pennine Bridleway, which runs 206 miles from Derbyshire to Cumbria. It is the only national trail designated for use by horse riders, cyclists and walkers." And here's some credits down here at the bottom of the poster of the partners involved in maintaining and publicising this particular site. Okay, we've now reached another stopping point where we can go left or right here. We're going to go right. So this is down into the area where there are some kilns, and you can see here where the piled up waste that wasn't used, that wasn't limestone, so sandstone and other gravel, was just piled up and left. But these are also, the mounds are from the remains of the water being hushed down. So you can see the water still runs quite freely down this side. The area near the car park is the source of the River Brun. Okay, so this is a fairly clear view of the landscape here, with the distinctive mounds from the Hushings. And of course this whole landscape is lowered a lot from what it would originally have been, according to local geological research and the official accounts on the hoardings and so on. There's some interesting dry stone wall here along the edges of this path. So continue down the path. Again, you see the distinctive mounds around here. Go off the trail a little bit here, you can see a bit more. So now we can see very clearly the landscape. So here the height of the land, basically, most of this land here was washed away in this little, what looks like a valley or a small gorge, but it's actually been hushed away by the use of storage ponds from behind me, with water then washing away the soil and revealing the limestone that was here. So you can see these piles of rubble just by the trees there in the centre of the frame. That would have just been left here, so We're talking about 17th century to very early 19th century here. So those rocks have been there a long time. You see a lot of rhododendrons as well growing here. It's because of the lime in the soil. And again, sort of pan slowly round. So you can see this level here. I pan up to it. This would have been the original level of the land, more or less. It's about the level of the land behind me. And it's been, I'll try and keep the camera at the same height to pan around here, and you can see just how much land has been taken away then in this area down here. Significant amount of land. And over there, on that little mound, there's another plaque just there. So we'll go and have a look at before we leave today. So here we can see some of the mounds of rubble that have been left. I forgot to mention the river actually flows behind the dry stone wall on part of the path we just walked on. The path I was just walking on is, we'll come to in a moment, is over there where the wall is, just visible there. You can see again on the some of the mounds here you have lots of rhododendron growing. So here we are back at the crossroads we saw a little earlier, where you can get down to the path or to the left. This time we're going to go on the left path. Okay, here we are at the plaque that we saw from down the other side of the path, which is just over there. But now you can see that there's a plaque over here, which we'll go to in a moment, and there's quite a nice path down here through the rhododendrons. So there's another information plaque here, which we'll have a look at now. The Hushings. So it says, this unusual moonlight landscape hides stories from the past. This area was once a hive of industrial activity during the 17th and 18th centuries, when open cast limestone mining was carried out. Limestone was separated from the soil using a process known as hushing. Water from the moors was diverted into ponds, which are much further up, number 1 on the graph there. It was then released down the slopes to hush the soils from the limestone at point 2, leaving large stones that were then taken to the nearby kilns and burned to make lime. This was transported by horses to be used as mortar for building and fertilizer for soil. The valley has been artificially widened to about 1/4 of a mile across. Look up and you can see the level of the original land surface above you. As the flowing water cut through the soils at either side of more resistant land, they created this lunar mountain range down the middle of the valley. Today these mounds are a wildlife haven. Plants like the common spotted orchid and eyebright thrive here. Look out for the meadow pipit darting around the mounds feeding on insects. So you can see here a close-up of the drawing here and the unusual landscape created by the movement of the water, the artificial movement of the water through this landscape. As I mentioned, opposite the car park for the Hushings is this wind farm operated by Scottish Power. On a sunny day like this, it's a nice place to be, and it's one of my favourite places to go locally. It's very tranquil up there, albeit obviously quite windy. There's a path that goes along it that can take about sort of half an hour to walk to the part where it joins to the track for horses. You can see that here in this little time lapse, the path. As we pan around now, you'll see the path as it heads back to the car park, so you get an idea of where it was as the camera pans down. It's just over the mound there in the background. So as I say, on a sunny day, a nice place to be. Now there are also some kilns at the Shedden Clough site, which unfortunately I wasn't able to film for this particular video, so do look out for those if you go and visit. I was most struck though by the fact that the industry there, this water related old industry of hushing to get the limestone products, it just was abandoned really. When the canal came and I guess the industry became uncompetitive, it was just left. The site is just abandoned with lots of stones strewn everywhere, the non-limestone stones that were left there, and various bits of the site are being cannibalized for the dry stone walling that is there on the site and for nearby farms and so on. But it's just abandoned really. The landscape was scoured away, spoiled to some degree, and it's just been left there. This surprised me a lot. I expect nowadays there would be some kind of environmental cleanup plan needed, and it would be unlikely that you'd be able to do that kind of large scale change to the landscape without some plan in place afterwards, or at least one would hope so. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Water Stuff. There'll be more coming, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye now.